By authors like Mary O'Donnell, Martin Malone, Ferdy McConagha, New York author Joan Hawkins, and more. This year, or at least over the last couple of years, we've been also publishing new work, select new work by authors. And so this year we were lucky, we had one nice republished book, which is the debut title of Val Mulcairn's, yes, spoiler, she's my aunt. But that was a centenary edition on her birth of her debut novel, came out in 1951, and that did really well. We followed that up with a really nice book of a collective, the Adnibs Collective, with a themed collection of short stories, and the nice thing is that they are all associated with the University of Limerick MA in Creative Writing. So I have a second new, and not only new work, but a new departure into poetry with this fabulous collection from Eoin, and I'm just really so proud to put this out. What can I say? It's our first poetry book. It is compelling, it's powerful, it's subtle as well, it's compassionate, it evokes rich elements of all of our family histories and places of origin. It touches, and then it also, in a really striking way, addresses issues that haunt us today in our lives. So I would love to thank Eoin for this wonderful book and encourage you to buy it. It's a great Christmas present. When you, like, I'd say buy it here in O'Mahony's. This is an Irish special edition, printed and published in Ireland, and you can get it signed by Eoin. But after that, you know, if you have people in Australia, America, England, whatever, they'll be able to go online and purchase it on any good bookshop website. So enjoy the rest of the reading, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Helena. I'm Sarah Moore Fitzgerald, and I'm really delighted to be here this evening for a whole range of different reasons. I'd like first to thank Claire O'Mahony and the team at O'Mahony's Bookshop. A city without a bookshop is a very sad thing, and that's happening more and more. And the fact that we have this wonderful space that honours so many different genres, full of booksellers who are also book lovers and who will press books into your hand enthusiastically, say, Sarah, something's just come in that you're going to love. Like, this is the kind of, you know, bespoke, sort of soulful work that is done in O'Mahony's on a daily basis. We have to support our independent book sellers and our bookshops, and we're so lucky to have O'Mahony's, and I think it's really appropriate that Eoin's wonderful collection is being launched here. It is a real joy. I've known Eoin for more than 30 years now. I know you'll be so surprised to hear that, seeing as we haven't aged at all. But in that time, I've seen him be many things. A brilliant academic, a musician, a writer, a performer, a poet, and, as most of you here will know, a general force of creative nature. He's one of those rare people who seem to run on a higher voltage than the rest of us, always innovating, always connecting, always full of this unstoppable mix of intellectual enthusiasm and sheer human joy. There are many things that distinguish his creative work. His willingness to engage, his discipline, which you don't see, and yet is really part of his practice, the courage he brings to lecture halls, to the airwaves, to the stage, to the page. But mostly I think it's his curiosity and his interest in the world and in people that distinguishes him. He's absolutely fascinated by everything and has a real love for the human truths that connect us all. And this shows. It shows in his work, and it shows in his personality, and it shows in the joyful, brilliant, funny, careful, clever way that he moves through life. I mean, I say careful, but I don't actually mean completely careful. There's a lovely recklessness in him as well, and I'll talk a little bit about that shortly. Our wonderful Donal Ryan is going to talk about the essence and quality of the collection in a minute. this collection that we're celebrating. So I don't want to say too much about this, but I do urge you, just as the wonderful Helena has done, and Claire, to really spread the word about this book. Good books get their tailwinds by word of mouth. It's really important. With all of the social media that's available now, and all the different mechanisms that we have to communicate with the world, it's one reader talking to another reader about something they loved. That's still more powerful than anything. And I really do, it really matters. And this is not about kind of selling a ton of books. I mean, it is, but it's about sharing really good work and finding new ways to connect us in a way that I know this book can and will and has already done. His poems are full of these vivid and textured kind of truths and atmospheres. They pull you right into the greasy streets of Pigtown. His writing finds beauty in the ordinary, meaning in the small moments, and a kind of quiet grace that he brings to the unsung heroes of everyday life. But I'm not going to talk too much about the work. As I say, Donal's going to do that. But Eoin is one of the most generous people I know. He shares what he knows freely. He reminds us that art belongs to everyone. He gives others courage. He's often given me courage. On the days that my self-belief is flagging, the person I know who's going to rescue me is Eoin Devereux. And he somehow makes me feel cleverer and braver just for being in his company. If I was going to summarise what I love about him, the many things I love about him, I think it's that he refuses to compromise. He insists on living life large and wide and deep. In any one week, you'll find, if you could find his diary, you'd see that he was going to be at a Sex Pistols gig on Monday and then deliver a keynote in Finland or London or France or somewhere on Tuesday, and then he'd find the time, and I witnessed this and the insanity, to leap into the Atlantic Ocean on the 22nd of October between meetings, just because life is too short not to. And I have to say, he and Liz, who are a fantastic team, have both been there for me and Ger, my husband, for all of life's many ups and downs. They've been there for us for the good times and the tough ones. They both have that rare gift for celebrating your joys and quietly standing with you in the storm. I suppose this is all to say that I feel richer and happier for knowing Eoin Devereux, and I know that there are very many people, a lot of them here in this room tonight, who feel exactly the same. Eoin Devereux, you are completely exceptional as a writer, as a poet, as a thinker, but mostly as a friend. I couldn't be prouder to be here to celebrate this amazing achievement with you tonight, and it now gives me so much pleasure to give the floor to our wonderful Donal Ryan to talk more about it.
Thanks a million, Sarah. I won't keep you long. I'm going to read about 40 of these poems. and then Owen's going to read the rest of them. I wrote them anyway. So, the high moral ground is a rapidly diminishing estate, packed as it is with pretenders and preachers of all shades, spouting their certitudes, performing their goodness in the grisly marketplace where kindness is traded for clicks. Those who loudly claim it rarely belong there. But Eoin Devereux takes no part in this grisly theatre of opinion. His gifts are the clarity of his vision, the openness of his heart, his wisdom and generosity. He wears these gifts lightly, and because he's a poet, he makes poetry out of them. Pasolini was right, Eoin Devereux tells us. Inside the palace, no one cares. For the carers, for the sofa surfing, for the working poor, for mothers queuing for food parcels, or the families imprisoned in cheap hotels. There are quiet explosions of truth and beauty on every page of this collection. Eoin turns a line towards the unexpected with the craftiness and boldness of the urban fox, whose spirit and image he appropriates to devastating effect when he describes a meeting with Mrs. Flynn, who stops the poet on the street to warn him about foxes coming out here from those welfare estates in town, throwing shapes, drinking, shifting, spitting. Ireland's soul is revealed between these covers. the workers who freed it from one tyranny, only to be yoked and used as badly by another, are paraded lovingly through its pages. The generations of men and women who turned their hands and set their backs to the founding of a country, who poured the concrete, laid the blocks, fixed the bicycles, who planted and reaped through the seasons of our republic's first century. And here, in all their variegated glory, are the ill-used, the punished, the imprisoned, the ignored, the landless, the people own ironically labels the cherished. Mikey Monday, Eilidh Carty, Alice Murphy, tormented men like Jimmy Sullivan and Dinny Ryan, direct, welcoming, encompassing, laced with the particular scything humour of a son of Limerick City via Enniscorthy. This is poetry that wraps itself around the reader, that lifts itself from the page to elevate its subjects. The unrecorded and uncelebrated, who quietly formed the backbone of a nation, here have their vast importance recognised, their nobility restored, and given strident, heartfelt, and always beautiful expression in the half-dozen seething, pulsing sections of Gardening Leave. In the closing lines of the poem Panthera, Owen's voice is that of a mother who has been priced out of the ability to make a home for her daughter, but spends her nights soothing her with stories. My worry-stone words reassure, and for now the questions cease. Despite the party political conference noise, underneath our emergency accommodation resting place, hope drifts into a safe harbour of sleep. Art doesn't necessarily reflect a clear image of the artist. As Sylvia Plath famously said, I write because there is a voice inside me which will not be still. She knew, as Eoin Devereux knows, that a writer's obligation is to put a grammar on existence. He writes of his own places and of his own people, but in a very real way he writes of all of us. In order to write well, you have to care about the world and the people in it. You have to be alive to the worth of all lives, the implacable imperatives of dignity, respect and justice. Eoin Devereux makes sacred these imperatives. He strives in his life, in his work and in his art to honour the people that he loves. As we honour him tonight, here in his hometown, among the people he loves and who love him, please welcome the poet, my dear friend, Eoin Devereux.
So thank you, Donal and Sarah, for this really warm introduction to Gardening Leave. It's a pleasure every day to work with both of you and also our other colleagues, Emily Cullen and Joe O'Connor, as part of the creative writing faculty at the University of Limerick. I also want to repeat thanks to Claire O'Mahony and all the staff who have made this launch possible this evening. As an independent bookstore, O'Mahony's remains an oasis in the heart of Limerick City. The O'Mahonys have always supported writers and creative writers in particular, and they've been particularly supportive in recent years of creative writing at the University of Limerick. I've had a very long relationship with the shop. I spotted a lovely Instagram or tweet today, which was a collage of the various invites to book launches, my books here at O'Mahony's. And I was reminded earlier this afternoon that it's some 29 years since I had my very, very first book launch here in O'Mahony's. All of my book launches to date have been books of an academic variety, my daily bread and butter. So for me at least, this evening is a radical departure in that I'm launching my debut poetry collection, Gardening Leave, a book that is quite clearly intensely personal, all writing is, and unashamedly political. I want to acknowledge the work of my editor, Helena Mulcairns of 451 Editions. Helena has worked tirelessly on the book from inception to finish. As an experienced editor, publisher, and music journalist, Helena's eye for detail is second to none. It's been a privilege to work with you, Helena. And I think what really cemented our working relationship was when I learned that Helena once interviewed David Bowie in Los Angeles with a scar on her face after crashing as a hot press journalist. And I knew straight away that we would get along. And I won't say too much about the cover, but we had great discussions about the cover, and many of the ideas we had about the cover didn't refer to other book covers or what they might look like. They in fact referred to the covers of 12-inch singles by the band New Order. And so Helena and I shared this literacy about music, and we got along very, very well. But more seriously, her attention to detail has just been second to none. I want to thank my friends and family who have been there for the long haul. Writing poetry is often a source of great amusement and probably embarrassment to my adult sons, Joe and Gavin, but I do want to acknowledge and recognise all they have given me as their dad. And most of all, I want to thank my wife, Liz, who has, if it were possible, an even cooler taste in music than me, for all her love and support. So I won't read too much, but I will read maybe 3 poems from the collection, and I'm delighted to do so. As Donald said, the poems are set between here in Limerick City and the town of Enniscorthy, where my father came from. And so it's about half and half in terms of where the poems are located. And the 3 or so I'll read this evening are all here, they're based here in Limerick City. So I grew up in a corporation estate on the south side of Limerick, which was built I was born in 1965. The estate opened in 1966, and we moved to live there. And before it was called Kennedy Park, it was known as the Bull Field. And you can look back, and as I did at kind of a lot of newspaper discussion, and the corporation were talking about what was going to happen in the Bull Field in the early to mid 1960s. One of the lasting memories I have as a child is of walking up and down the Roxborough Road to Sexton Street, to the school, the Christian Brothers School there. And certainly in the 1970s, you would see men on the back of a tractor being taken from the psychiatric hospital to work the land. And they worked on a farm belonging to the psychiatric hospital. So the Bullfield poem it tries to remember those men. And I suppose appropriately enough, I wrote this poem literally in the first days of November a number of years ago. The Bullfield. On All Souls' Day, I knelt down on the mottled tundra clay. Ear cupped to the frozen ground, I could faintly hear the murmurings of men buried nameless in the pauper's grave. Simple men like Francie Murphy and Brendan Plunkett, let out for the day to belly crawl over damp drills, hand-picking potatoes, greyhound cabbage, carrots, turnips, mangels. It takes a lot of work to feed a hospital. In the Bullfield, I see Matty Keane and Pa O'Brien, able-bodied innocents, chopping wood or ricking turf, thrown the odd players or woodbine as payment for their toil. In the Bullfield, I also see tormented men like Jim Sullivan and Dinny Ryan, fattening pigs with sour milk and potato skins, slopping out greeny brown scutter from their pens. I see them all and somehow cannot deny them. Men who were dumped in silence at first light from the back of a blue Ford tractor, exchanging their labour for bed and board in the madhouse named after the patron saint of workers. When I started to try and publish in the area of creative writing, I started with flash fiction and short stories, and poems then began to emerge, and I kind of came out as poet then after that. But one of the first pieces I had success with was a flash fiction story called Goodnight Scarlet. And it was written from the perspective of a homeless man who was sleeping in the doorway of a disused video store. And there was an old poster of Scarlett Johansson on the wall of the video shop. And he went through this ritual each evening of saying goodbye to, or goodnight to his mother and his father and his sisters and his brothers, people he hadn't seen, in many, many years. And the last thing he said before he closed his eyes in the shop doorway was to say goodnight, Scarlett. So Goodnight Scarlett that story gave rise to a number of poems. And this is one of them. It's called Blue Suede Shoes. And this is where the same character is thinking back to his childhood. And sometimes when people become homeless, they don't necessarily become homeless because they're addicted. There are often other reasons, particularly when home is not a safe place. Blue suede shoes. Remembering can be a perilous thing. In heavy November rain, when rotten leaves, twigs and fag butts clog the drains, I see my father's face in petrol rainbow-stained puddles. He's young, kind, brill cream quiffed, not yet given to violence. He's in the galley kitchen of our motherless house, beer merry, singing about shoes. Brushes of lustrous horsehair and a ragged sock are taken with gentle care from his box of tricks. The box lives under the sink. As he works, he croons, 1 for the polish, 2 for the shine, plenty of elbow grease, lots of spit, and they'll be fine. But don't you step on my blue suede shoes. He waxes and scrubs, waxes and rubs, caressing each shoe as if they were pieces of wafer-thin Chinese porcelain. And when he finishes, he tenderly places them on the narrow kitchen table to sit and wait on pages ripped from Friday's Irish press, 5 pairs, all black, lined up for early Sunday Mass. So, some of the poems in this collection stretch back to work that has been published over the last 10 years or so, but there are also many new poems in the collection. And one of the more recent poems, which I would have written early summer of this year, which ended up in the collection, and in fact, it actually didn't nearly end up in it because I forgot to include it in the folder going to the publisher. But it's a poem called Foxes, and Donald mentioned this, and I suppose I won't say too much about it, but I'm kind of intrigued by middle-class paranoia about the world and the kind of worries of the middle classes, God love them. During her regular morning walk, Mrs. Flynn stopped to warn me about foxes. They're coming out here, she said, from those welfare estates in town, throwing shapes, drinking, shifting, spitting, travelling by e-scooter, bus, bicycle or stolen car. And she added, I have it on good authority, that their ringleader is a guy called Ginger Hickey. It's not just our designer chickens, deluxe wheelie bins, or bespoke Angora rabbits they're after. Oh no, my new infrared doorbell camera has captured them. Casing houses, checking windows, doors, even our pristine 25-2 Tesla cars. Shy Brian in number 3 told me that just last week, 2 Todds in designer black hoodies jumped a shop counter, demanding chicken rolls, cigarettes and cider. Mrs. Flynn, he said, you should have seen the go-hack of them with their blood-red docks, fade cuts and bling. And Shy Brian from number 3 added, sometimes, Mrs. Flynn, there are vixens who wear nothing but pajamas, false eyelashes, smothered in fake tan, all the while suggestively shaking their BBLs. It's like the Kardashians. These foxes, Mrs. Flynn warned, are a serious threat to our community. We are the people who get up early in the morning. And now there is talk of more of them coming here from out foreign. That will be even worse. Those foreign foxes haven't a word of English. Something will have to be done by someone. We'll have to gate the estate, close the borders, remain vigilant, or else there will be anarchy. A complete breakdown of everything we have worked for, of everything we hold dear. I'll finish with one last short poem, and I'll tell you quickly the kind of backstory to this, and it was one of those odd moments of synchronicity that I had. So in this bookshop, in the early 2000s, I bought a book called The Springing of George Blake. And The Springing of George Blake was written by Sean Burke, who was a Limerick man. He was Feathery Burke's nephew, and he was imprisoned in Wormwood Scrubs, and he famously sprang this double agent, this spy, George Blake, ended up getting him to Berlin and then to Moscow. And Sean Burke then wrote this book, The Springing of George Blake. He made the equivalent of about £1 million, probably £150,000 in 1970, so a huge amount of money. And he gave most of the money away. He drank the money. He had a very dishevelled life. He contributed hugely to Jim Kemmy. He wrote Jim Kemmy's Limerick Socialist and so on, a really interesting figure. I bought the book in this shop and had it at home. And then I gave it away or sold it or gave it to a charity shop or something like that and forgot all about it. So last November, 12 months, I was in a shop in Galway called Bell Book and Candle, and there was a book, The Springing of George Blake. I bought the book, didn't think about it, brought it home, opened the cover, and inside the cover was my code for my pass card, which I'd written in 2011. So the book clearly wanted to come back to me. And I read it again, and it gave rise to quite a number of poems about this person, Sean Burke, who would have come into this shop and so on. Very interesting figure. So the poem is called Pravda, in memory of Sean Burke. My cousin Desmond, and the reference to Desmond is Desmond O'Grady, the poet. My cousin Desmond, a versifier, worked for Ezra Pound. My uncle Feathery, a rich miser, gave pennies for scrap in tumble-down Limerick town. I served my time as a banana stealer, a bomb maker, a jailbreaker, a scribbler. I taught myself in Wormwood Scrubs. I forgot myself in Moscow pubs. Seduced by whiskey, repulsed by poverty, I was a reluctant guest of the KGB. The hard lessons I learned came not from Christian Brothers nor Dangan Industrial School, and I realised a long time ago that Richard Lovelace was no fool. Stone walls do not corral, cages do not contain. The chains that constrain us most of all often spring from within. Thank you.